Welcome to our Students with King Nonviolence Spotlight Series. I'm Kalisha Graves, but my students call me Professor Graves. I'm a teacher, and I really enjoy helping students learn more about the life and impact of Mrs. Coretta Scott King. Coretta Scott King is commonly known as the wife and widow of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But what I want you to know is that she was a woman of substance and commitment. Yes, that's right. Mrs. King was a leader and a world changer in her own right. Mrs. King was a leader, a wife, and a mother. She fought for freedom, and she inspired Dr. King to fight for freedom. And because of her, we have the Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolent Social Change. She was also the driving force behind the National King Holiday, which is celebrated every third Monday in January. Yes, you guessed it, Mrs. King was awesome. Coretta Scott was born on April 27, 1927, in Heiberger, Alabama, to Obadiah Scott and Bernice McMurray Scott. As a young person, she attended the Lincoln High School. Later, she attended Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, where she majored in music and elementary education. After leaving Antioch College, she attended the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston, Massachusetts, where she majored in voice and violin. While studying at the New England Conservatory of Music, she met Martin Luther King Jr. Mrs. King and Dr. King had a common interest in social justice and activism. Together, they committed their lives to bring about peace and justice through nonviolent social change.
The world is in dire need of a spiritual awakening which will make those eternal values of love, justice, mercy, and peace meaningful in our time.
Mrs. King was not only important to the civil rights movement, of which she and her husband were central leaders, but she was also a leader in the global fight for social justice. Mrs. King believed in working for what she called the higher cause of service. This means that she believed people had a responsibility to fight for peace, justice, and equality. She believed that people could come together and achieve the beloved community through nonviolent resistance to repression and injustice around the nation and the world.
Nonviolence is the most powerful force that we have for the counteracting of hatred, bitterness, and violence which have infested our society.
Let me break it down for you. Our world is better because of Coretta Scott King. Throughout her life, Mrs. King was involved in a variety of causes, from the Montgomery bus boycott to the Charleston hospital workers movement. She participated in marches and nonviolent direct action campaigns. However, what many young people don't know is that one of Mrs. King's key contributions to the civil rights movement was through the performing arts. Yes, Mrs. King was a trained singer. And during the movement, she developed and performed what were called freedom concerts. The freedom concerts told the story of the civil rights movement through narrative and song. These events raised awareness about the experiences of African Americans in this country and raised money for the civil rights movement. In other words, Mrs. King stepped in when she realized that the civil rights movement needed her help. Will you step in when people need you? Mrs. King believed that young people had the power to change the world. She insisted that young people had a role to play in bringing about the beloved community. She wanted to empower young people to know that you can make a difference. She said,
Today's student is now recognized as a significant political actor with amazing power to influence the course of societies all over the world. In many ways, American students have now, with all their innocence and open generosity, become the prodding conscience to those in power and those aspiring to it.
I hope that each of you were able to learn something new about Mrs. Coretta Scott King and her impact. But the greatest lesson I want you to capture from her life is this: you are never too young to make change. Always remember that your life has meaning and purpose. You have a place in this world. One of her favorite quotes was by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and it says, "Lives of great men all remind us that we can make our lives sublime and departing leave footprints upon the sands of time." In other words, you can make a difference because your voice matters. I want to leave you with this challenge. Each of us has a personal responsibility to help create a more just, humane, equitable, and peaceful world. Following Mrs. King's example, how do you plan to make a difference in the world? And finally, always remember to be love.
So these young people are being prepared differently than I was because they live in a different time. But the most important thing they have to decide is not just to get an education and to be selfish about it, but that they must prepare themselves to give back and to make a difference in the world. We have to create what my husband called the beloved community. If we are to survive, we have to learn how to solve our problems and resolve our conflicts in a nonviolent manner. And so I think it's important for them to realize that they have a personal responsibility, each one of them.
If you would like to learn more, please check out our website at thekingcenter.org. Special thanks to our sponsor, the National Football League, for making this moment possible.